Yo, what's up, everybody? Cova here, back again with another live stream and another great interview. But before we get into that, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to this channel. This is my new channel where I'm doing a bunch of live streams, interviews, drawing streams, and things of that nature. Also, go check out my website where I have all my comics. You can buy some comics on my website that I have in stock. AWOL issue number 1, number 2, and a bunch of other comics that I put out this last year or so. I also have some comics on there you can download for free. Also, go check out my Patreon. On my Patreon, you have some exclusive content as well. It's only $5 a month to subscribe to there. You get exclusive content. I do like reviews on that Patreon. And even if you sign up as a free member, you'll get access to most of the content on there, except for like the exclusive edited content that I have on that site. Yeah, so we have a really dope artist. He's doing his first comic. Is really dope. I was lucky enough to read it early. We have Daniel SawBlade. Hey, what's up, man?
Cova. Hi, man. How are you?
I'm good. How about you, man?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on, man. And I just wanted to say I've been enjoying your channel. I love how you break things down and analyze it, man. You're doing great.
Thank you. I really appreciate that you check it out, man.
I did.
Every time I hear somebody who like says they watch the channel, I always feel like grateful because I don't, a number on the screen doesn't really like mean anything, but whenever I hear somebody say something about it, they're like, it just makes you feel like, oh, I'm really touching people, or people are actually, paying attention, so thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, and I discovered you and your work and your channel through obviously Brian, you being on the stream and not only in the chat, but also, doing live streams with Brian. And so it was good to get familiar with your channel before I got on here. And yeah, man, it's impressive. I'm really impressed.
Yeah. Sweet. Thank you. So, enough about me. We're here to talk about your comic and your Kickstarter, Terrorrat, which is going to be going live here soon on Kickstarter. So talk to us about like the comic and what the inspiration was for this comic.
Okay, the comic is basically, I would have to just go ahead and say it's a couple of things. It's been a lifelong dream of mine to get through an entire story worth of material for a comic. Throughout the 30 plus years of my artistic career, or even at the beginning of it, before it all happened for me, I would do 5 pages here, 5 pages there of my own stuff. And then prior to that, submissions back in the early 90s, excuse me. And nothing really happened with that. So my career kind of just went into illustration because I was told, kind of took it to heart. I don't think it was any kind of malintent. It was just, hey, you're more of an illustrator. Sequential art's different. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I kept that in the back of my head for a long time. I always loved comics, and so this comic came about because basically therapy. I had a uninvited guest in my home. A rat somehow got into my house and was in here for 3 weeks. And when I finally got rid of it and found out that it was an infestation, fortunately, my girlfriend suggested, that'd be a good kind of slice of life comic. You should do a comic about that. You chasing this rat around your house. And I was like, I don't know about that, but make a good character. So that's how Terrorrat came about. And then the kind of social commentary part of it, and is maybe my reaction to my surroundings around me in this new part of town. I'm kind of the outskirts of my town. And I knew it was there, but it's so present here. And I don't want to get too far into political things, but it's satire. It's my therapy. It's how I got through it. I had some experiences here that were really unpleasant and negative. So my way of handling it, just to, um, again, just to offer myself some kind of peacefulness inside and get some feelings out.
Yeah.
I did the comic, so it accomplished a few different things, and I'm really happy with it. Um, it's a accumulation of just all kinds of things that I guess brought me to this point artistically. All the things I grew up with, loved, um, you know, and don't like. So, um, yeah, that's, hope that wasn't too wordy or long, but that's it in a nutshell.
No, that's perfect, man. I mean, I think the best comics definitely come from like um it was like osmosis where they just kind of come off these random ideas that you wouldn't even think would make a good comic, and then they just end up becoming a story. Like one of my comics that I made was originally going to be a bootleg comic about the character Sleepwalker. He was kind of popular in the 90s,
Yeah, I remember that
and I
book.
was thinking about doing like a bootleg of his character, and then the story from that evolved into a horror comic I ended up making early last year or into the last year. And just like those types of things just just come out of nowhere. The best ideas or your favorite ideas just come out of nowhere, where I feel like when you have like this intent to do stuff, at times it can kind of hinder you whenever you're
Yeah.
just kind of free flowing, having fun. It kind of it is like the best. Like I always say that one of my comics that I did was a like a Spider-Man bootleg comic, and that one, it was, I didn't plot out anything or write anything. I just was like, all right, I'm gonna make this basic plot, and I'm just gonna draw a bunch of characters fighting. And then every time I look at that comic, even if though it's not like my best artwork, it is the most fun that I had making a comic. And so I think that is it shows even when I was reading this the other night when you sent it to me, and I was like, man, this is super dope. I loved like the like you said, like the comedy aspect of it, how goofy these characterizations of these people that you have in here. And I think it played well with what you were going for in the theme. Like it wasn't too serious or overhanded, but it also was super fun. And I could tell you were just having fun with these pages, and your artwork is just phenomenal, dude. Like,
Dude, thank you, man.
yeah, this it's amazing. Like you're a really really talented. So how did you get like involved with Lethal Comics, and how did you get them to help you push this comic and put it on Kickstarter?
Man, thanks for those kind words because I've always been super intimidated by the comics art form and medium. I struggle with panel to panel um, continuity and storytelling. It's such a challenge for me. But anyway, how I got hooked up with the Lethal people, Lethal Comics, I actually know, I already knew Andy Bellinger. I met him 10 years ago at a Comic Con that I was at. And we were familiar with each other's work. I think he was one of the first people I followed on Instagram like 10 years ago. But um, there was just a mutual admiration for the work. And so we didn't really keep in touch, but there was a brief hello and like your work. And I hadn't really talked to him too much since. And then I saw recently, back in August or September, I saw a friend of mine who's also from Canada, Ben Mara. I don't know if you're familiar with the cartoonist Ben Mara,
Mm-hmm.
but he was on Andy's YouTube channel. I didn't know Andy had a YouTube channel, so I watched all of them and enjoyed them. And so I reached out to Andy and said, "Hey, a long time, man. I just wanted to give you props on the new channel, and I saw my friend Ben Mara. I didn't know you guys knew each other. So we just started talking, and he asked me what I was up to, and I said, "Well, I'm about to, got about 8 pages left of my comic." He goes, "Really? Let me see it." And I showed it to him. And he goes, "Do you have a publisher?" And I was like, "A photocopier," because that's what I was gonna do. And he goes, "Man, please let me publish this for you." And I'm like, "Let's do it," because I had looked at Lethal comics, kind of off and on prior, and was impressed. Uh, so I was stoked. I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. So they that's how that all. I finished up the 8 pages and sent it to them, and we've been kind of working on it ever since, trying to get this thing into people's hands. So
Nice. What was your original before like the Kickstarter or even getting tapped in with Lethal? What was your original plan for the comic? What were you gonna do with it?
well, like I said, I was gonna literally just when I was done, take it to pretty much how I do all my other zines and stuff. I was just gonna run off however many copies I could here and there and just distribute them through my web store.
Oh, okay.
When I could, I mean, or go to shows and sell them. It wasn't going to be. I had no real big aspirations, really. I mean, I was really happy with it and proud of it, but yeah, that was kind of just it. It was going to be very, very grassroots and low tech, you know.
Nice.
So
yeah, I did that with the first couple of my comics before I landed on AWOL. I did a bunch of just like promote it a little bit myself, and then do like small print runs of books and then just sell them off my website, and then like pretty much kind of like just promote them through like the YouTube channel. That's kind of like the whole point of me doing YouTube is to sell comics essentially, and so
sure.
that's kind of what I've been doing. And then I did the Kickstarter this past summer, and that was interesting experience. So I mean, it was nice that you have like people who are helping you with it. Because I mean, when I
Yes.
was doing it by myself, it was just like a whole headache, just trying to promote everything, trying to like make sure everything was lined up right and all that stuff. So, I don't doubt that the Kickstarter is gonna do really well because, like I said, your artwork is super dope. It has really like great appeal to it, at least in my mind. And also, you have like a huge following on Instagram. How did you accumulate all those followers on Instagram? That's like, when did that happen?
That well, I started the Instagram 10 years ago. Okay, that was a different Instagram was a little bit different back then. But prior to that, I kind of already had a name built up in the music scenes that I've been involved with for 30 plus years, doing T-shirt designs and record covers for bands and friends, and so the name got circulated that way. And so I was on some social media platforms before then, a little bit on Facebook. That never did anything for me. And then when the MySpace craze thing happened, I got on there. But I just never was really messed with it too much. Like I said, even before those things came along, I kind of already had a name built up. So I guess by the time, because the first time I got on Instagram, I got 200 followers right away.
Oh wow!
Because I guess people saw that I was on there, and it built from there. But really, how I got it was ever since I've been on, I've been posting consistently. I draw like a madman. So whether I have a paying job or not, I'm always doing something to promote my work and think of projects to do. So along the way, it just built up, and bigger jobs came, and more notoriety, and this year it's kind of fell off. It's been kind of hard. There's things happening right now that may play into that, but I saw it as I told Brian this. I saw this as like an opportunity to just go into comics. I've always wanted to be a cartoonist, so this part of my career is kind of dying down. I'll jump into this just like I did the first time around. You just jump in it and go.
Nice.
And I did the work. That's how the opportunity came with Terrorrat. The work was pretty much done by the time they came along. So
that's dope. Yeah, I mean, once you have the final product, that's kind of I've seen this because I've started getting back, like started going to conventions, and I've noticed that like the biggest thing that people pay attention to is whether or not you actually have a comic done. And like, it's one thing to go and show like promotional art or give people a business card or stuff like that, but the best business card you can have is actual comic to give to people. And
Dude,
every time, like, when I was going to shows these last couple years, I would always either have like an ashcan version of the comic that I'm working on, or actual comic, the copies of the comics that I had, and I would just give them out to people and stuff. And I always have like my contacts on there, where it'd be like a QR code, or the like the ads to like all my social media and stuff like that. So that definitely probably helped a lot. Speaking of, I know you did freelance for a long time. How did you like navigate that? That was always something when I always people who like do freelance work a lot. How did you, like, was it just like word of mouth, like, oh, like recommendations wise, or were you like applying for certain jobs? Because I was looking at your website and I seen that you did, like, you done children's illustration, like you said you did, where you worked for bands. I even saw you did some stuff for Meat Cannon, who's like a huge YouTuber. How
it
did you
is.
like navigate between these spaces and get from like job to job to maintain yourself like financially as an artist?
Again, it was through constant work and posting it. And when your stuff is made visible, people see it. But when you do one thing, other eyes will see it. So once you do that one thing that will get, a certain amount of eyes on it, then that'll generate other things. But you have to do the work. You just have to produce, whether you're making money or not. Um, and that's what I did. Certain things happened with, like with the children's book, for example. That was work from a small kind of design firm that I was doing work with, like right while I was in high school, actually. And they kind of kept me going with jobs and stuff off and on. But that was separate from the work that I was doing on Instagram. So the stuff on Instagram, I tailored purposely for things that I want to be known for. So whatever that is, you do that work and put it out there, and
Yeah.
that brings you the jobs that that you're interested in. I know that sounds like it makes it basic and easy. It's not easy. I'm just saying that as an obsessive, uh, drawer, I think that that's what brought the work in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense though, because I mean, even I had like one of my first experiences doing that. Like the YouTube thing, going back to, like, this is like the thing that's really been working for me creatively outside of like the comic stuff. This last video I posted about Image Comics, I got a commission off of it because I posted like clips of me drawing in the video. So now that has my brain thinking like, oh, maybe I should do that a little bit more. Maybe I should post more, just B-roll of me just drawing. And and that's just something that kind of, like you said, you just kind of put yourself out there, and then if people like your stuff, they will hit you up. I mean, that's kind of like was like one of the original intents of social media, especially nowadays, where social media kind of went from this, keeping in contact with your family and friends, to more allow like people brand themselves and market themselves as something, to put out to the world where people can reach out to them. And it's supposed to be a direct line. It's not really like that no more, where it's kind of hard to kind of
It
feed
is
through all the
hard.
messages and stuff now. But even with that, it is something. It becomes a thing. And even when I look at your artwork, you do have a certain style with that. You use a lot of heavy blacks, a lot of cryptic, gothic imagery, Satanist imagery, and stuff like that. So how did you like land on that style? I know you say you came from like the metal background, underground, rock bands and stuff like that. How did you
Right.
land into that style? And then how did you get comfortable with like using so many blacks and stuff like that? How did you get to that point?
Oh yeah. Different places. The imagery, like you said, kind of comes from my metal background, but also too, I was raised in a really fundamentalist Christian, real hardcore Christian background, and I always had a resistance uh, towards that stuff. I always felt oppressed.
Mhm.
So seeing that imagery even early on wasn't scary to me. It was like trying to think, like a almost like a battle flag for me,
Hmm.
and I represent, and it was almost like a banner of freedom for just anybody. So I kind of took that imagery to and put it into my own work, and did it my own way. And then, of course, a lot of the bands that I enjoyed growing up had that imagery, whether it be for shock value or for whatever. But ultimately, it's just aesthetically pleasing to me, and I think it goes well with my style. The heavy blacks come from things that I was already looking at.
Hmm.
Old artwork, like old etchings, and all the way up to like comics. Um, those old EC artists, just old artists, comic artists back in the day and period. It's heavy on the blacks,
Yeah, for sure.
and I love the richness and boldness and contrast of that work. So I always wanted to incorporate that, into my work. So that's where those things come from, I think. Yeah.
At what point, what did you get comfortable with that? Because even sometimes with my work, I'm always like, I don't want to put too much black, but I don't want to leave it less. I always like have this conflict with myself when I'm producing like pieces and stuff like that. When did you get comfortable with that style? And even with the etching that you do on like your pages on like Terrorrat, for example, you do a lot of like really fine details, a lot of etching. And when did you start getting comfortable with that style?
Uh, I guess the more I did it, the more comfortable I got with it. Early on, it wasn't present. Even the
Mhm.
blacks, I would try. That is a thing. You got to balance it out. Some pieces don't need it. Some
Yeah.
panels don't need it. It depends on what you're trying to do. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, I mean, it seems with every piece I get more comfortable with it. It's always a challenge. It never really comes easy. Um, the cross hatching stuff really, I think my eyes got open to that when I saw, of course, the old EC artists, Reed Crandall and Jack Davis had a lot of hatching. But what really brought it to light for me was Robert Crumb's work. I
Hmm.
think he's a master at cross hatching. And when the film came out, that led me into the undergrounds, all the
Yeah.
70s underground artists that incorporated uh, hatching and stippling too in their work. So that's where those things come from. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. That like that hatching that you do, and even like with Crumb and those type of artists, it really adds like a real grade to it. I'm when I was showing some of my work off at a con, one of the artists said you need to like learn how to balance out your whites with your blacks and you need your middle tones with the grays and stuff like that. I don't do too much hatching with my work. Maybe it's more because I'm just like not comfortable with it yet. Maybe I don't, I'm not sure where I've landed in that space with my work as far as hatching goes. Sometimes I'll do bold blacks or I'll do just like heavy line weight. But
Right.
when I see your work, it definitely does give me that like underground feel because a lot of those underground comics do have a lot of the the hatching, the stippling, the
Yeah.
real fine cross hatching to where it does become its own tone. Whereas like sometimes when I want a gray tone, usually I use like digital gray tones or like zipper tones. I have
Yeah.
physical zipper tones. So sometimes I'll put that in there depending if I have time because digital physical zipper tones take is a mission to add all that stuff on there.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know you're older than me. You've seen a lot of the progression of like the comic space and stuff. So how have you been like kept up with a lot of the comics like to modern, or do you stick with a lot of the classes that you kind of came up with? How have you kind of navigated that space of like the comics and stuff?
That's a good question. I would say it's been off and on as
Mhm.
far as mainstream modern stuff is concerned. Every once in a while, something will catch my eye and I'll give it a chance. But honestly, when digital coloring came into play and the paper changed, I kind of dropped out.
Mhm.
And the art styles changed a lot. So I lost interest because the first thing is the art. Stories, good, yeah, fine. You need a good story, obviously, but if the story isn't interesting to me or sucks or whatever, if it has good artwork and storytelling and things that I can learn from it, it's still a good comic. Because I'm art first.
Yeah.
So when those things started changing, that's around the time I would say 93, 94-ish, and I started getting into the undergrounds and heavy metal magazine. So when so what was coming onto the stands, I didn't pay too much attention to. My peers that are my age that stuck with cartooning and had careers got into things like Daniel Clowes and I did notice Charles Burns, but I didn't pick up those books. A lot of the black and white indies of the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really. It had to be a certain way with me visually. The very brutal fantasy and sci-fi real, if it wasn't monsters or horror or something like that, I just was very narrow-minded. My mind's opening up a little bit more in recent years, but you know so yeah, that's pretty much how that was to this day. Like, I'll give something a chance now if it grabs me, and regardless of how it's produced or what it's printed on. Um, but it will still bug me if the pages are too shiny and the digital colors too plasticky. I
Mm-hmm.
just can't. To me, it's just never been comics. I'm very much if it's not going to be on newsprint, let's print it where I can see it and it's not reflecting. Like, it's not a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, those are just picky things. But yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. And if it's not anything new, I'm going back trying to get things that I missed or skipped back then. So I'm into collecting uh, floppies and
Mm-hmm.
Mac issues that I missed and stuff like that. So
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely the same way as you. I'm definitely art first. Like, if the art doesn't pop out to me, I don't care what the story is. If the art doesn't look good to me, I can't pick it up. I'm definitely I lean more towards like cartoony styles. Like, I respect like the Jim Lees and the David Finches and those artists who are like really technical in their style and then the structure of their characters and stuff. But I
right,
always found it to be kind of mundane and a little boring. Whereas like I love like a cartoony style, like
me too.
like Durf Back Durf. I've been really getting
Love it.
into this cartoonist named Wes Craig. Daniel Warren
Yeah,
Johnson is one of my favorites. He's like a newer guy.
I like
James
his work.
Herron. Yeah, a lot of those guys who are way more
Yeah,
loose and a lot more. You can tell they have a lot more like manga influence to a degree. Because I grew up, heavily like a manga, anime, and stuff that was really prevalent, in my childhood growing up. So, when people have those little aspects on there, but not people who lean too heavily on manga, because then I kind of feel you're not really having your own voice, especially if you're like, from the West. But that's just like my own, like you said, like nitpicky things.
I
As
agree.
far as paper and stuff goes, I never really like all the stuff that was already produced when I was coming up, or there was never really that much newsprint. So newsprint is kind of like a rarity for me in my,
Right,
things that I go and pick up. But
right.
with that being said, like what keeps you motivated creatively? Like, if you're not reading comics, what are other things outside of comics that keep you motivated to continue to make, the art that you do? And outside of like the monetary reasons, obviously, but what are some things that keep you motivated creatively to keep going?
Well, I think nowadays, if it's not comics, I love to make my own publications, my own zines. I love the tactile, hands-on uh, uh, component to making those things. I mean, all the way from laying out by hand and cut and pasting my own work down to logos, text, images, and arranging them on the page and then photocopying them. I love that process. It's the hard way to do it, but
Mhm.
I enjoy it. Um, so it's not really about being efficient. It's about that feeling of just starting it all with my hands from the beginning. And then, when I press that copy button and it comes out and I hand staple them and symbol them and glue things and there it is. It's my own book in my hands that I don't have to wait for specs or an editor or whatever. So I enjoy zine making a lot. That motivates me. And again, just you know, random illustrations, just a love of drawing, filling up sketchbooks. I have, you're talking about cartoony stuff. I have sketchbooks just filled of, you know, random uh, cartoony things. I love designing, like, you know, possible toy designs, and uh, experiment with different styles, and yeah, I just love creating what comes to my head, and so that's what motivates me. Just pen to paper, man, constantly, as much as I can. More
Well,
so
that's
than I,
awesome.
more so than in my youth, I guess. You know, at 50, I'm realizing. I mean, what do I have? 20 years, maybe, hopefully. I mean, I remember 20 years ago, some of it like it was yesterday. A lot of it I don't, but since I don't have a lot of time left in the grand scheme of things, I want to get as much art done as possible while I can. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's what
Yeah, if
motivates.
you, yeah, that's awesome, man. My motivation is essentially like you said, how you feel about making the zines and stuff. I feel the same way when it comes to making comics. I like the feeling of having it done and then having it in my hands and being able to look at it, and then maybe I won't look at it for a couple months and I go back and I pick it up. I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I made this. And that is like the my favorite feeling in the world.
Yeah.
I always have this motto where it's like, um not perfection but completion, where I don't care if it's perfect. I want it to be done so I can look at it later and have it for
Absolutely.
later, and then even share it with other people. And that's really what motivates me a lot creatively. I don't rely on comics or do anything creative as for like monetary gain. So I always try to keep it as a fun thing. And that's another motivation, just because it's just like it's a stress reliever. It's something that at the end of the day, when I put the kids down, and I have my own time to myself, I like to draw, I like to write, make the videos on my channel and stuff like that. That is something that just motivates me every day, because obviously that's what I'm constantly thinking about every day. Where whether it's an art thing, a new comic book story, a new video idea, even having guests on. Like I, starting to figure out how I'm gonna be able to ask you the right questions, and have make sure these interviews are timely, and they look good and stuff like that. And those are things that just
Yes.
like motivate me outside. And obviously I don't have all day to do stuff, because I have a full-time job and I have kids. So like when I have these finite times at the end of the day, usually between like 8 and like midnight, I always just try to hammer in. And I think that's kind of helped me a lot, keep my time on tact and be
Sure.
as productive as possible. Because even when there's like weekends, like sometimes like my wife will take my kids and they'll go do stuff for the weekend, and they'll go out of town and go to her family's house, or my in-laws and stuff. And I'll have like a lot of time, and sometimes I'm just like, you know what, I'm gonna take a nap, or so I'll waste that time. I mean, it might not be, it's not like super wasted time, but what I'm saying, like it's kind of like, I
Sometimes you
won't.
need that, man. Sometimes
Yeah,
you
yeah,
need
for sure. But
it.
I think about like, man, if I didn't, have those, structures, I might not be as motivated or creative, or
Right.
even as disciplined as I am now. So I always find that as like a interesting, like a blessing, kind of.
Sure.
But when I lost my train of thought. But when I look at your work, I think it's really, like I said, like fantastic. It looks really, really good. And
Thank you.
even when we talk about the zines, I mean, how did you kind of get into like the zine culture? Was that like from just like being around underground things? I know, the funny thing about like underground culture, I feel like all the underground things kind of mesh together to a certain degree. Like whereas underground music, whereas like rock or rap, or those type of deals, and zine culture kind of fluctuates, and even comics, they kind of fluctuate together. How
Sure.
is that, like how have you kind of, like, I mean, I don't know if you kind of see that same thing or not, but how have you kind of navigated through those spaces and kind of found the correlation?
I think some of them tie together, especially, well, in the music scenes that I grew up in. That was the way that you found out about bands, uh, what they were doing. musically and interviews. And, there were mainstream ones on a level that you'd maybe find at a bookstore, but or more professionally printed, down to the one that made it, a kid that made it on a Xerox machine and mailed them out. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. That was just the only way to communicate, to find out about things. So fanzines were a huge part of my life and growing up, and how I discovered certain things in a way that they were made is how I approached comics. It kind of ties into, I guess zine culture kind of ties together the grassroots aspect of it. Zine culture ties in through networking with people, camaraderie. So it kind of almost doesn't. I mean, there's a scene for different things. With comics, it would be like, I think that's where ash cans kind of have that feeling of zine culture, because
Mm-hmm.
the thing you make on a photocopier that you pass out. It's exchanging ideas and getting your message out there cheaply and at a quick rate. So yeah, it just ties. It goes back to my youth, and it wasn't until recent years though that I actually made one. I had several attempts along the way, but when I was younger, I didn't have the discipline or attention span to really do anything other than just draw. As far as like making things like a zine or organizing a project for myself to finish was never. Making pages, for example, like
Mm-hmm.
that would only go so far with me as far as comics till just recently. So, um, so yeah, that's kind of where that comes from, I think. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. That's interesting. Yeah, I honestly didn't even really know like anything about zine or zine culture and really how prevalent it was until I started getting back into comics. I knew what comics was, and comics essentially is like a commercial art form, so it's pretty mainstream, especially like superhero comics. And then once I started like diving deeper into more, alternative style comics that aren't necessarily like Marvel or DC stuff or even Image stuff, more things that are just through the like the underground, not even underground, we just even cheaters in between those spaces, and then going to shows and talking to more people. I had no idea like what zine culture was and what it kind of really
Well,
feels like and looks like.
yeah, that makes sense because I mean, well, I'm talking about prior to the internet.
Oh,
You
okay.
know, well, even up until the creation of the internet, but more so prior to the internet, that was the only way to communicate. That the mail system was our internet. That was our social
Mhm.
media. That's how you communicated. You wrote letters and exchanged zines or publications, flyers. And again, comics do come from. I mean, there were people that made underground comics in kind of a zine format and distribute them that way. Um, so I mean, it kind of makes sense if you're not, of a certain time. But then the thing about it is, it's still relevant today as a form of expression and as just
Mhm.
another way to communicate ideas cheaply and quickly. Um, well, cheaply in comparison to anything else. But yeah, I mean that makes sense.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
it's an awesome thing to discover and then just utilize for your own um, artistic indulgence. I mean, it's for anybody. That's what's
Mhm.
great about it. You can do a zine just about anything. It doesn't matter, uh, whatever kind of art or comics you want to do, combine them together. I mean, that's what I did on my first zine. I combined certain music reviews of bands that I liked and did a mini comic in it. That was my first zine.
Nice.
So yeah.
Yeah, I felt like it definitely is kind of, I wouldn't say it's a lost art form, but it's definitely more of like it kind of evolved into different spaces now that the internet is prevalent. Like
Right.
most like, I remember growing up because I'm from Texas also. I'm from San Antonio. I remember in San
Oh, okay.
Antonio
Yeah.
there was a lot of like independent publication newspapers and stuff. So they'll have I don't remember what it was called in San Antonio. I think it was called The Current or something. And it was an independent newspaper. I remember my mom would pick it up sometimes, and then when I would look through it, it would have like indie comic book fest, not comic book, indie movie festivals, and interviews with certain artists or writers and people you would see in like I think the incentives, the News Express, like the mainstream newspaper, and obviously those mediums have kind of dwindled down to more of the corporate stuff, and not a lot of people are producing newspapers just for the hell of it anymore, right? And all those people have kind of
Right.
evolved and moved towards to like things like Substack. They'll do whatever on YouTube, Instagram pages, and I think the ziner has evolved into more of a digital space where people do digital zines, like I said, Substack, blogging, things like that. And it
Sure.
definitely is a missed opportunity because it can be, it's still people want to see those things. People want to still read, and find out about new things and even read like reviews, like you said, um, about and stuff like that, and even find like mini comics or artists and interviews with people you might not see who may not be comfortable doing these type of interviews like this or things in that nature. So it is like I don't think things really disappear. They kind of just fluctuate into different spaces. Like even when like you're real a fan of like rock roll music and metal and stuff, and at one point I remember that was like the mainstream music in and on the radio and stuff, things like maybe more poppy bands, probably bands you didn't listen to like Green Day and My Chemical Romance and bands like that like peaked, and now you don't ever see like rock or metal or anything in like the top selling
No,
albums anymore, right? I think like rap kind of took this spot, and now
right.
people are kind of saying rap's kind of teetering down. And it's funny whenever people kind of compare like the commercial success of a musical medium to like it's how relevant it is or how good it is, when it's like obviously people who are like ingrained in those type of cultures know that the number one hit rap song is probably not the best rap song, or the number one hit rock and roll song
Right.
isn't the best one, so
Sure.
I mean, I don't know how you've you've seen that evolution of those things of things kind of peaking and teetering down, and
Oh yeah.
how you yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, what I remember is '80s, so that was mainstream. I mean, rock and metal was very, very up in the forefront,
Mhm.
and very, very popular with the youth of the time. And then yeah, even up until like the early '90s, I would say, and then it kind of changed into other things that I didn't listen to. But
Mhm.
I think that happens with any kind of music scene that gets popular. It fluctuates and splinters off into its own things. So yeah, I've noticed the comings and goings of things like that. Um, I've been to Europe and I noticed that the things that I liked or grew up with never went out of vogue. It just kind of went into the next generation. It's the same with comics. They respect the art form and hold it close and appreciate the classics as well as the new things that come up of whatever genre that is. And as far as zines, man, yeah, they go into these spaces on the internet, what would replace a zine. But I think a zine nowadays is more of can be an art piece
Mhm.
as well as communicate in person to somebody something. But I think it's important as an art piece. Just like I think that even though it's not to the level it was in the heyday of comics being printed before the internet in large numbers, comics are still important physically to me. I think that the physical act of reading a comic by turning the page and getting to that panel that is that page turner, that's a hit
Mhm.
that you don't quite get to me digitally. I think it's still viable, even I think even more so with like uh, comic strips online.
Mhm.
I think work really well, and mean, however you consume them is great to get the comic, but um, I just thought there's something to be said about that physical page turning, be it with a comic or a zine, you know. So
Yeah, for sure. When I got back into reading comics and picking up comics, at first I was more into like digital, not because I like wasn't, going to shops. It was just like I wasn't sure if I wanted to invest money in certain books stuff. And as I've, the years have gone by, last like 4 or 5 years, I've been really only going to picking up books now because it's just I just like you have the experience is a lot more different when you read the book. And when you're able to flip through the book and read it in the form that it was meant to be read. Um, and consumed, so I think there is something to say where, physical comics. I mean, obviously, internet's been around for the last 20 years and comic books aren't really going anywhere, even though people keep saying, oh, the industry's done, da, da, da. It's still going to be around. It's still, I mean, books aren't never going to go anywhere either. And because it is something, I think even the feeling of just doing it, the tangible act of just flipping the page, like you said, and, certain mediums do work better like digitally or have evolved like comic wise digitally. Like there's things like manhwa, which are like Korean manga comics where they've figured out how to do it where like the scrolling action. So instead of being like panels or pages, it's just like one long scroll and it kind of fluctuates through scenes in the comic. And I mean, it's cool for what it's worth. It's not my cup of tea, but I can see the appeal of why people like it because it is a different creative. I don't know if you've seen any manhwa or anything like that.
no, I'm not familiar with that at all.
But
That's
yeah, it's really cool.
interesting.
It's
I'll
just
check
like
it out.
the scenes bleed into each other, so it's like one endless scroll of a comic essentially. So there's not sometimes they'll have panels and stuff like that, but it'll be like say there's an action scene, they'll be like you scroll up, is he slicing one way, the guy slicing the other way, and it kind of just goes that way. And like I said, it is really it's pretty popular for what it is, and it is an interesting form. Like it's not really something I was really into. I couldn't really vibe with it. I like the panels and I like the page turners and stuff. But and even the Instagram comics, like when I first started getting back into drawing and making comics, I did an Instagram comic when I first started my channel. That's actually how I even found out. That's how I even got back into making comics because I found some Instagram pages that were doing Instagram comics. I don't know if you know the cartoonist Simon Hanselman. He's
Uh,
European. He's done Megan Mogg comics. I don't know, you might not know who he is, but
I'm not familiar with that.
he's
Yeah.
I think he's published mainly through like Fantagraphics and stuff, but
Okay.
he was during the pandemic, he did like I don't know, it was like 3 or 4 months of a comic about like the pandemic essentially, and it was called Crisis Zone with his characters, and he was doing it on Instagram like daily. And that's how I kind of got back into making comics. I was like, oh man, I didn't realize people were doing comics on Instagram. And then I kind of figured out, started doing that for a little bit, and then it kind of evolved to me doing more regular like comics and stuff like that. Um, so it is a medium that kind of evolves, through time and how people will evolve into a certain way. Even with you, I always find it, I find it interesting that you've capitalized and actually use social media the way you do, because a lot of people, not to call you like old or anything, like people your age or older, sometimes
Yeah, I'm old. Yeah.
they don't even understand social media or don't even want to learn it. But like I said, you have a huge following on Instagram. You said you use all the other platforms. I even saw that you had a YouTube page where you were doing like live streams and, posting videos of you talking about comics and stuff. How have you kind of, felt the importance of social media, impact your work? And, why did you continue to, grow with the certain platforms? Because, I'm sure you were getting jobs and work before, social media platforms. So how did you navigate into these spaces?
That's a good question. Well, I have a lot of help. I'm not
Mhm.
the best at social media stuff, and I'm still very low tech and kind of kind of a caveman, so to speak, the, with all of it. Excuse me, but I do the best I can. As far as like the platforms, Instagram honestly came about because the people I worked with at the time was like, man, you've got to get on Instagram. You're crazy. You got to get on it now. And I'm glad I listened to them because,
Mhm.
that kind of jumpstart my career again. Because at the time I wasn't doing as much, but when I got on Instagram, it changed for me because once I saw the potential that they saw with it, I didn't stop. I was like, okay, because when you're in your room and you're just doing it because you're doing it, you're not getting a pat on the back or feedback, or you're just creating. Once you get feedback or an opportunity or um, whatever else, eyes on it, you're already doing the work, but I don't know, it gives you kind of a little bit of a boost. Maybe it's an endorphin rush, but but as far as all the other stuff, yeah, it was me having help along the way. The YouTube channel was that I had or have. It's not really active at the moment because my brother was doing all the editing
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that, and our schedules changed, and we had a business together, and that kind of crumbled uh, this year due to some struggles we had with it. We had to dissolve our LLC, but again, like I said earlier, that just segued into like, okay, well, I'm gonna, no matter what, if I have to go get a part-time job and just be a cartoonist, that's what I'm gonna do. But I'm gonna jump into cartooning now, and that kind of fell around the time that I created Terrorrat. So uh, my career is just kind of where it takes me. It's very choppy and up and down. I guess that's part of being a freelancer too.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Now I feel good about it. Um, it's like a new beginning. I mean, so
That's dope. I mean, I'm glad you stay motivated and staying like positive, with the outlooks. But I'm sure you've probably dealt with ups and lows your whole time, working in this field.
tons, and honestly, it's the lowest right now. But again, I'm trying to stay positive and just look at it as uh, just a refresh in a way, and tackle something that I've always wanted to tackle, and I'm doing it. So um, hopefully, this book will kick off and at least get printed. That's all I'm worried about with it. So
Nice. That's awesome, man. That was literally my motivation when I did my Kickstarter.
yeah,
Also, we just as long as I get it funded and I have the money to print the book, that's all I care about.
yeah.
So like, what are your like future plans for Terror Rat? What are have you any other ideas of comics that you want to do? Where are you going from here with the comics?
Um, I've got a ton of ideas and a ton of ideas for Terrorrat. It's funny you mentioned that before we hopped on this live stream. I just started roughing out the pages for the next issue. So I've got another story in mind, and so I'm getting ready for writing and breaking down panels for that one. So
Nice, nice.
yeah.
Is it going to be? I don't want to spoil it because obviously the first one hasn't even came out yet. I just dropped a link to anybody who's watching to go sign up for the pre-launch. Is it going to be more of the same, like a singular one-off issue, or are you kind of going to do like chronological, with the story, or how are you going to tackle the future issues of this series?
Yeah, awesome you asked that. Terrorrat, for the most part, will be self-contained issues, unless I do a story arc, that requires, 1 to 3 part, 4 part miniseries.
Hmm.
But other than that, they'll be self-contained issues. I feel like it allows some breathing room for the character. I don't think it's the type of comic that needs to be long, ongoing with this huge story that morphs into other things. I don't think I've got a lot of different characters for the book and ideas, um, but again, they are primarily self-contained stories.
Yeah, yeah. I think self-contained is probably like the best. I always feel like doing stuff like that, it makes it easier because you kind of just have the freedom to do whatever you want as far as writing goes. I always struggle with want to do like a mini series or do just a one shot, and I always kind of go back and forth because what I'm starting to learn about myself is that I just get really not tired, but I have so much creative stuff going on where I'll want to do like a mini series, and then after I'm done, I'm like, oh, like I don't want to keep doing this, or I get another idea that pops up in my head, and I'm just like, man, I just want to do that now. I don't want to keep continuing on doing this, and I
Right.
mean, the luxury of the luxury of being a cartoonist, a person who writes and draws their own stuff, you kind of have the freedom to do that. Where
Right.
if I was just a writer, I wouldn't be able to do that. Or I mean, maybe I could, because I would just be able to just hand it off to different creative artists. But if I was just an artist, I might not have been able to do that. And so I think
Right.
that is a luxury, just to be able to write and draw, and then you just did the one off thing. And I think it kind of is, like I said, best to do that, because you look at something like a Hellboy, where most of those are like self-contained stories, and they can kind of bleed into, they kind of have like this timeline that fans have kind of put together that makes sense. But you can read a one issue or one story arc of Hellboy, and you can get a complete story and not have to read anything else. So I think there's
Right.
beauty in that. And even when I was reading this, your writing is really, really good. Like
Oh,
you laid out
wow.
all the characters, I think, really well.
Well, I
You've
appreciate
I've
that.
Oh yeah, no worries, man. And
Well,
it's
because
like,
I don't think writing's my strong suit.
mhm,
I don't see myself as a strong writer. So I viewed this story, not really a story, but a long sequence that I just
yeah,
dialogued, because again, I'm going to work on it, but I struggle with beginning, middle, and end, and really structuring a good story. And I think that's an art in of itself, but you work on it. And again, I based a lot of this on stuff I hear and see.
mhm, yeah, yeah,
Although it's exaggerated and it's satire, it is based on my environment. So I'm
mhm,
reacting to it in a satirical way with a character that's outlandish and crazy, because um, I like monsters.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so that means a lot to me that you enjoyed reading it, because I was really I'm kind of self-conscious about that part of my work. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, writing, yeah, definitely is an art form in itself when it comes to like writing themes and adding these layers to it and stuff.
Yeah.
But with the thing like comics, you don't have to be super in depth or super deep with it in order for it to be enjoyable. I think that is like I was saying earlier, it is a commercial medium. It's just like there's all these movies, these B-roll B movies, and these schlocky, super,
Right.
generally speaking, can be considered trash, right? But there's these
Sure.
cult followings of people who just enjoy them because they are funny, or they're the absurdity of the comic, or not of the movie and stuff, and people just enjoy it for what it's worth. They can turn their brain off, and there's something to say about escapism, which is like an argument people always throw out there, time and time, whether it's in good faith or not. But when I was reading your comic, I got to like I can see that now that you said it is a long sequence of just the Terrorrat just going around just doing
Right.
crazy stuff. But even the things you put in with the random characters here and there, and this like the absurdity you put into the characters, and the over
Yeah.
exaggeration of these goofy rednecks, essentially.
Sure.
I found it funny and interesting, and then alongside your artwork is really, really good. So it kind of it really plays really well with itself, and
Thank you.
within itself as a story. And I really enjoyed it. Me, I have a problem with trying to put too many ideas in a story, and then I end up planning. I write a script, and I'm like, okay, this comic is going to be 24 pages, and then by the end of it, it ends up being 60 pages. I'm like,
Man,
how did I do this? Why did I do this to myself? And
I
yeah.
I had that same issue with the first one I did before Terrorrat. I had
Mhm,
like this kind of sci-fi epic thing that I was writing, that I was intending to make 30 pages or so, and it was going past that, and I was like, man, I just want to do a comic. So I did just a 6-pager mini
mhm,
comic of Terrorrat, and that's what spawned
mhm,
the 24-pager, and that flowed gracefully, man. Like, I knew exactly from start to finish what it was going to be. So it wasn't a waste of time going 15 pages into my other story and stopping, because it was almost like a trial run or practice run. I tend to finish that one, but
mhm,
it was almost like, man, I got to get this done. So that's funny you mentioned that, because that's exactly how I felt while I was drawing. I was like, man, what did I get myself into? Because it just kept adding, to the pages.
I always do that to myself. I'm always like, man, why did I want to draw this sequence? And now I got to try to figure out how to draw it. And
Yeah.
how do you, like when you do your goals for like making a comic, like do you do like 1 page a day? Is your goal a couple panels a day? How do you kind of structure or schedule out your productivity with, making this comic?
Well, luckily, um, last year, well, no, this year, earlier this year, when I started Terrorrat, I was able to pencil it in a month
Oh, wow.
because of where I was with my work situation. Um, it was maybe leftovers from last year where, still had a little bit of money in the bank and there were a couple jobs coming in that could buy me some time to uh, rough the pages out, figure out what's gonna to write, and then letter it, go back and ink the lettering, and then I just started penciling from there. And it took me about a month to
Okay.
pencil, but it took me 6 months to ink it because a couple of jobs started coming in, and then I had some life things happen,
Mhm.
so it was just slower. So to answer your question on how I tackled it, daily was, well, when I was inking it, it was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna to try to get this panel done or as much as I can. So it was basically a panel a day if I could on a page. And Brian
Okay.
was pushing for that too. And along this time I was inking it, or I had started inking it, I discovered Brian's channel. I knew Brian already from, uh, didn't know him, but I knew of him because of his guest appearances on Cartoonist Kayfabe. So I was like, oh my God, he has a channel. And I immediately followed, and he kept me going through those pages. So that kept me motivated, and that's how I tackled it. This is basically a panel a day when I was inking it.
That's dope, man. That's awesome. Do you feel like doing a lot of the freelance work and the commission work and the jobs kind of helped you like understand the reality of what it like what's the word, like a deadline was, and just kind of how to get stuff done in a timely fashion? Or how did you think that kind of helped you with making the comic or working on your art, or even getting more efficient with your artwork?
Yeah, I think that has a little bit to do it. I've always had that ingrained, even with my own personal projects. Not that I set a hard deadline for myself, but the
Hmm.
work ethic of every time I roll out of bed and brush my teeth and go straight to my desk and start drawing. Like I figure out what needs to be done for the day and then I tackle it. Um, so they've always been regimented, even when it's slow for me. Um, so yeah, that's just that discipline. You put it to put it towards your projects, and I think that I think you mentioned this earlier. Not having clients, or not doing art for money, it can be hard to motivate yourself sometimes.
Hmm.
But I think that having that end goal of what it should be can keep you motivated if you keep it in your mind. Because, man, I've already done it enough in my life. No one wants to just, an unfinished comic sitting there. You
Yeah.
know, finished is better than perfect, like we were saying earlier, because that's just the way to go. Um,
Yeah.
so
I,
I kept looking at that and like, okay, well, I know exactly what I'm going to do, so I'm going to pencil it. And that luckily was of course, I don't do super tight pencils on my
mhm.
stuff. I do a lot of finishing in the inks, so that kind of sped things up. But then, man, I'm sure you know that you get to inking a page, you're going to like, oh man, this is not going well, or I have to change this, or so there were some corrections, but overall, man, it went smooth. But yeah, that I think just discipline is a key to get things done. You got to have that end goal that in your head, and just work towards it. You
For
know.
sure, for sure. I think a lot of times people have a hard time with that, like discipline, or even like using their time wisely. Um, a lot of like when I was first getting back into making comics and getting back into this space, I found a lot of channels and people I listened to that have a lot of like information that wasn't necessarily artistic, but more of like disciplinary, where there would be like things like learning how to market yourself. And also, I don't remember which artist I found who said this, but he essentially was like, it doesn't matter how much time you have, it's just matters of what you do during that time.
Yes.
And just kind of, if you have 30 minutes to study art, use that 30 minutes wisely. If you have 8 hours to study art, more power to you. But it doesn't really matter how much time you have. It's a matter of what you do with that time. And I've taken that to heart, for pretty much this whole time. And I feel like I draw fairly quickly. I think the more higher my skill gets, the more slower I will become, just because I mean, even look at your stuff, you do all the stenciling and that cross hatching. I'm sure that takes hell of time, and I don't do none of that stuff yet. So I'm sure once I start incorporating those things, if I do end up leaning into that path, it might, it might slow me up. I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know, maybe it's just like young man energy or something like that, where I just kind of just, I'm gonna stay up late if I have to, to knock stuff out. Like I'll figure out
Yeah.
sleep later. Maybe that's just kind of something I've kind of done. I try not to do it too much, like stay up super late or whatever. But discipline is definitely a key factor to success in general with life. But when it comes to cartooning, I've seen a lot of people who have less things, the responsibilities in their life that don't get as much done as I do because of, whatever reasons. But I always try to stay motivated and disciplined with my my art form. I think that's just the most important thing.
Yeah. I think, you hit the nail on the head. And, it's not how much time you have, it's what you do with it. And so many people, you'd be surprised, or maybe not. So many people, I would say mostly younger people or younger than me, and sometimes not. They're just people that ask me, like, man, I've always wanted to draw like that, or what can I do to get to your level? Draw more.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with comics. Like, gotta draw more comics. You gotta get those panels on the page, figure out storytelling. And that's what I had to do. And I
Mhm.
still feel like, man, I've got a long ways to go for someone my age that's been in the industry for years, has thousands of pages, and I'm just getting started. So I'm really, really hungry for it. I know you got to have that hunger for whatever you're doing, and then act on it, and then uh, you get things done, or you don't. You don't because you're not. I guess you don't really want it, and I always wanted to draw,
Mhm.
not just to get better, but just I think I have to. If I don't, I get really I get antsy and I don't feel good inside. I have
Yeah.
to. I have to do it. It's a bodily function at this point.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
definitely gotten to that point too. Whether it's like um drawing something or writing or working on a video or coming up with another concept for a comic or
Yeah.
video, that's literally a daily thing for me. Like I pretty much liken it to just going to the gym. Like I'm a gym guy. I go to the gym. I don't
Yeah.
go to gym as much as I used to. I used to go 7 days a week, and now I'm more like a 4 day a week person.
Right.
But even that, it was just like just daily routine. And then when I first started working out, I was just trying to figure out how, to get in shape and what I need to do, workouts that go. And now when I go, it's just like back of my mind, and just I already know what my routine is to whatever day that is and what I'm going to do. And it's pretty much the same thing as with drawing art and with comics and stuff. I always just plan everything out accordingly to what I have planned for that day, whether it's either working on pages, inking pages, writing a script, something, and then within this last year, I've started learning to do that with the YouTube, where I've been able to make it a well-oiled machine on, okay, this is the time frame I need to write a script, this is the time frame I need to edit, this time frame I need to figure out how to market the book out into YouTube or whatever. And it's just been a slow burn. I've found that success isn't the day overnight thing. It's more of a long term goal. Whereas like
Yeah.
you, I guess your artwork is really really good, and it just takes a lot of years you have to put in before you can get to a point where you feel, well, not even where you feel, because you might not even feel like it's that great, but where other people start feeling, for you or telling you like, oh man, that's really, really good. That's really, really dope. And it kind of becomes a habit that you just kind of ingrain in yourself, and you just kind of just keep going and going and going until it's just like life or death, and you can't you can't live without it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pushing forward and not staying stagnant. And
Mhm.
oh, that was great, man. Good job. Thank you. But there's so much more that I think I can accomplish. And, um, I was going to say with your style, I watched you draw with Brian, and I love the boldness of it. And, as far as including cross hatching or heavy blacks in your work, well, that's the beauty of comics. You could do a comic where you purposely experiment with those things, whether it's your intent to make it your part of your main style or not. That's what's great about it,
Mhm.
I also wanted to ask you, I've heard you mention to Brian, and I think you mentioned it briefly in this talk that, you're not interested in you have a career already, you have a job, but say cartooning did pick up for you and could be a job for you. Would you take hold of that and go for that, or do you want to keep it as more of just a passions project side thing? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I have aspirations for it to become my professional
Okay.
career, but
Okay.
I kind of say that as a way of just kind of like keeping it to a pure place as of now, because I don't want to think of it as, because I think a lot of people to a certain point they'll start thinking of it as like, this needs to be my career. I need to make money off of it, and and then they have these expectations, and then when they don't reach those expectations or it doesn't work out in the timeline they expect it to, it kind of drains them, and it kind of keeps them. It kind of makes them want to quit or not want to do it anymore. As where if I kind of keep it in my mind as something pure and into myself and not be stressed out about doing it, or feeling like I need to make a certain amount of money and I will lose my motivation to do it. You know,
Mhm.
um, like
Okay.
even with a YouTube, right? My main channel, I get paid to, for some of the videos I monetized, so I get, a little bit of money here and there depending on the videos. And sometimes, I find myself a little annoyed or stressed out when the video doesn't do very well. Not, I mean, a little bit because of the money, but also just because I'm like, man, I put all this time and stuff. And, YouTube isn't like my favorite, main favorite thing to do. It is something that I'm starting to like fall in love with, more and more. But, um, so I kind of see it as like a, not like a job, but just like, that little bit of money that I get from it, I kind of,
But
I incorporated into like my budget of things. So when it doesn't get to
yeah,
a certain point of views, I kind of get a little annoyed, and it makes me like less motivated to want to keep continuing. Whereas with the comics, it's like I'm willing to just give the stuff out for free, because it's just like I'm proud of it because I did it. And I feel like if I got to a point where, and maybe this is my, I haven't been there yet. But if I get to a point where I'm just like relying on the money, I feel like I'm gonna it might corrupt my creative love for it. But I like my goal is right now at this point is to kind of build myself up as a person, as a brand, and build up my artistic skills to where I get to the point when I am ready to um attack it as a full-time career. I have like the leverage and like the fan base and the backing behind me preemptively that I already built, while just doing it kind of more grassroots, to where I won't have to be too reliant on these corporate entities where it's like a Marvel or DC or whatever the fuck
right,
to um to make money off of it. Where, what I'm saying, like I don't want to just do it
right.
more of like an indie way, but I don't want to like deflect from like a mainstream or from working for people, because I don't care. I mean, I would do that, but I don't want to be beholden to that. And also, like I said, I don't want to have like this goal in mind where if I'm not making $10,000 a month off of comics and I can't pay my bills or whatever, whatever, it kind of corrupts it just a bit. That's just kind of how I am. But for sure, I will like the long term goal. One of my long term goals is to be, full time published, making money off of comics. But I understand the reality in the long term, and then I kind of like it's like a Jedi mind trick I'm kind of just doing to myself to keep myself from not really
Yeah.
focusing on monetary gain from it right now, at least.
Yeah, I think that's a smart approach. And what you describe is some of the frustrations I've had also as well. I think you're off to a good start with your channel because that can tie into your comics as far as
Mhm.
growing that fan base and peddling your wares, so to speak. I mean, you present your comic on your channel that's gaining success, and man, that's with anything that grows. Some things will be successful and some things won't be, and you can't let the ones that don't do as well as you had hoped get you down.
Mhm.
Uh, just keep going. Um, and that's what I've done. You know, I've been dependent on my artwork for income for almost 6 years now, because before then it was just part time. It was freelance work, and I always
Mhm.
had like a part time job. But a little bit before COVID hit, uh, I hurt myself, and I decided, well, I'm just going to do art full time now. And I created pieces and posted them on Instagram and sold them. It was just selling
Yeah.
originals, and then that grew into gaining jobs and but I've always straddled mainstream work with very underground and grassroots. It's a mix with me, and I'm not uh, dependent or beholden to any one thing. But that's the beauty of freelance. You can choose
Yeah.
your path, and I think you that's a pretty good approach. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. I mean, I mean, I used to listen to a lot of like podcasts and stuff, and I don't remember who would listen to that said this, but not everybody's meant to be like the lead singer, quote unquote. Like sometimes that path, like say you want to be a lead singer or the rapper or whatever, that path might not
right.
work for you. But if you start learning how to be the engineer or the person who makes the beats or the person who is able to market the bands or the rapper or whoever, that is a viable job that you can gain access that way and then lead you into the thing that you really want, right? Like you'll see somebody like there's a producer named Metro Boomin. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a pretty prevalent producer, and now he's gotten to the point where he makes his own albums and he gets the artist that he wants on there, and he's able to he's leveraged his success in the field that he's maximized in into doing things and venturing off into more other creative fields. And that's where I'm kind of coming in with it at it with the comic stuff, because I noticed that Instagram isn't really working for me. And even though I'm, younger, I never really was really good at social media either. I wasn't very much like a person who followed trends or was like posting things that people wanted to see.
No,
Even with like artwork, like I've noticed that if you want to kind of become popular, be a artist, you have to kind of do like fan art and stuff like that. I'm never really a person who's into that. I want to just post what I want to post and just go from there. And I've always been a person who watched YouTube. And I just kind of started, trying the YouTube because I kind of seen, even I was, my goal was very small. I was like, okay, if I can have a small finite people who are always watching my videos, like over 1,000 people every time I drop a video, views or whatever, I could probably sell like one or two comics to each person.
yeah,
Maybe it's more not, and I've succeeded or went way above my goal that I have. So now I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I keep motivating people to go and buy my books and stuff like that. And it's just like a learning process, just kind of tackling it every day. And then even starting the second channel where I pretty much what I want to do with this is like you have conversations with people who are like you've been a professional artist for a long time, so bouncing off this conversation and I could learn something from it, and maybe you could learn something from me. And even talking to people who are in my peer group, people who are still coming up as artists, who are working day jobs but making comics on the side, and we can learn something off of each other. And I've learned with these last, I mean, I've done like this is like my 12th something interview I've done on this channel, and I've learned
yeah.
so much different things, and even just like motivations and ideas behind why people do stuff is important information in itself. So I'm just kind of just going with it and just kind of hoping it just keeps growing and growing, and it gets to the point where I want to be, and the goal right now might be different in 10 years, but for now
Yeah.
I kind of have I try to do like a 5-year process, like 5 years goal. So I kind of I'll figure out what I want to do these next 5 years. And then after those 5 years are up, 5 years from there, and I go 2 full like long-term goals, but a little short-term.
Yeah, it's like starting a new business. You give it 5 years and see where it goes.
Yeah.
I think your approach is correct. You want honesty. You don't. I mean, everyone's got their own path and own decisions. It's fine, whatever. But I could never get on board with, okay, well, Pokemons are hot right now, so I need to draw Pokemon, or whatever's hot. I need to be drawn. I was never. If I did any kind of fan art, it's because I wanted to.
Same.
At that time, I don't rely. I mean, really, anytime I've done fan art, it doesn't really get the best reaction as it would on my own. Sometimes it'll hit, but that's not why I do stuff. I just do stuff because I want to.
Yeah.
And that shows in the work. I think that's key. So I think your approach to that's smart because, you don't, I don't know. To me, it doesn't make sense to do something only just because it's popular to do. It's not.
It doesn't really have long-term like gain, and it just kind of doesn't.
It's not real.
Yeah, for sure.
I could never do like my comic. Oh, it's hot to do this, so I'm just gonna jump on board and do this kind of thing. First of all, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I just know I love comics, and I had this idea, and I did it, and it worked. So, as far as it being something that I could do and finish, and possibly get printed, that's the way to go, I think.
Yeah, for sure, man. So, yeah, just, kind of wrap things up here. I don't want to hold you off too long, but so, again, we have Terrorrat, which is becoming the Kickstarter here soon. Any last words you want to speak on about the comic before, for the audience that's watching and people who want to watch in the near future, like kind of what you have to say about this comic?
Thank you to anybody who's, signed up and hit that notification button already. And anybody watching this now, please, if any of this has sounded interesting to you and you like my work and are into comics, you may like this. So if you could hop on board and join the Kickstarter, that'd be great. And Cova, thank you again for giving this platform and promoting it.
Yeah, for sure. And everybody, it is a good comic. I was lucky enough to read it early. It's really, really super dope. Even though I read it early, I'm still going to back the campaign because I want to have the physical copy in my hand. Go sign up for the pre-launch page. The link is in the chat, but it's also going to be in the description of this video. The links to SawBlade Instagram will be in the link in this video as well. It's going to be a fun time. It's a really, really dope comic. If you like underground, gritty, grimy, kind of horror type monster vibes, this is going to be the comic for you.
And some comedy.
Yeah, a lot of comedy. Yeah, real funny, real satirical, really, really dope. I appreciate you for stopping by, man.
Thank you, Cova. Keep doing what you're doing, man.
Yeah, you too. All right,
take care, bro.
Yep.